Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to Wake Up, Look Up, a podcast where we connect events happening in real time to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm Zach Weihrauch. And in today's episode, we're asking the question, can education cure sin? And before I tell you the story this is coming from, this is a vital question for our time and age, because I think overwhelmingly our society believes that education is the key to leading people to morality. Education is the key to changing people. But more and more, we're finding that isn't true. In this case, this is coming from a New York Times article written by Charles Piller, who actually has a book coming out on this topic. And it goes like this. Alzheimer's affects over 7 million Americans. It's a devastating and debilitating disease that probably you know someone who has dealt with or is dealing with this disease. And if that's the case, my heart goes out to you because it can be a horrific experience for them and for you. The leading researcher on Alzheimer's, in fact, someone who has risen to national prominence, taking a number of influential roles, has recently been discovered to be a fraud. That's right. The research that made him famous, it turns out key elements of it he fabricated. That's the point of Piller's book and the point of the article that I read. In fact, this researcher generated over 600 fraudulent studies. 600 fraudulent studies that became some of the leading information for how we deal with Alzheimer's, how we understand it, how we treat it. And if you don't understand how the scientific and medical community works, is that when one of these studies comes out, it becomes the basis for future studies. So it's like playing Jenga. If you take out the wrong block, in this case, say, hey, these 600 studies are erroneous, the whole tower comes down because these 600 fraudulent studies have been cited over 80,000 times in other medical studies and scholarly journal articles. It's led to a number of erroneous conclusions. Piller's kind of whole point is we really don't know what we think we know about Alzheimer's, and we've set ourselves back a generation of research because one guy lied constantly about his research. Now, why did he do that? Well, the Bible tells us we're all sinners. And the truth is, the more your research gets published, the more money you make, the more prestige you get, the more positions you obtain. And pride and greed are part of what it means to be sinful people. But the point I want to make here is, as you might imagine, this researcher is an educated guy. A number of degrees on the wall. You can't do these studies or obtain this status without educational criteria being met. He is highly educated, but he's still a liar. He is highly educated, but greed and pride are still a reality. That's because the Bible tells us that all of us fall short of the glory of God. Education doesn't change the human heart. Status doesn't mean you don't get greedy or proud. In our country, we tend to think that all of our problems, from racism to greed, from pride to marital difficulty, can be solved by one more degree, one more book, one more piece of information, that if we could just educate everyone, the world would be safe and peaceful and prosperous, especially in areas like science, where all that matters is chasing the truth. Except for that isn't true, because people are sinful no matter what degrees they have. Education doesn't change the human heart. You take me to a neighborhood where everyone has a college degree, and I'll show you the same neighborhood where marriages are crumbling, where bigotry is still existent, where neighbor love isn't happening because people live there and people are sinful. This story is a reminder to us as Christians that this is why preaching the gospel to people matters, not just because it changes their eternal status with God, but because only Jesus can transform sinners. This is the point that Paul makes in 2 Corinthians 5. It is Jesus who takes us from unrighteous to righteous. It's Jesus who fulfills the promises of Ezekiel and Jeremiah for God to take out our heart of stone and to give us a heart of flesh. It's Jesus who can eat a meal with Zacchaeus and turn a thief and extortionist into a kind and generous neighbor-loving man by sharing with him the reality of who Jesus is and what he has come to do. It looks like education matters. Medicine, science, these things matter. But if we make them ultimate, not only are we misplacing them, but we're not fixing what is actually ailing us. Not only is the world broken, but we'll find decades of research being flushed down the toilet because although we understand the human body, we don't understand the human heart. Only God does. That's why we need Jesus, and that's why the people around you, even if they're high-level medical researchers, need him too. Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode of Wake Up, Look Up. While you're here, take a minute to like and subscribe. It really helps us get the word out. Don't hesitate to leave a review wherever you might find this podcast on an audio level and help spread the word. And hey, while you're here, check out all the other content we have at Christ Community Chapel on YouTube. Some of those videos are popping up on the screen now. Click on one.